Before the story begins, if you enjoy sci-fi where humanity turns ridicule into dominance, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment what you think the human is about to do. Trust me, you'll want to be here when the laughter stops. They sold war the way other species sold grain. The galactic exchange yards drifted above a gas giant the color of a bruised eye, its storms flashing beneath transparent floors as buyers and sellers crowded the platforms. Weapons hung in gravity nets. Decommissioned dreadnought cores glowed weakly in containment rings. Creatures engineered for battle stood shackled, tagged, and priced like damaged equipment. Laughter rolled across Dock 9. It came from mouths with mandibles, beaks, and vibrating membranes, all pointed toward the same thing chained at the end of the platform. The war horse no longer stood tall. Once, it had been a living siege engine, six-legged, armored with adaptive plating, its spine fused with weapon pylons old enough to predate most modern empires. Now it knelt low, its massive frame scarred and uneven, one foreleg locked straight by a rusted joint. Power conduits flickered through cracks in its plating like dying veins. One eye was gone, replaced by a dull sensor that failed to focus. Its original designation scrolled above it in faded glyphs, followed by a final word that carried more weight than any insult. Unrideable. A broker with translucent skin slapped the auction rail, still chuckling. Behold, it announced, voice amplified for spectacle. The Apex Cavalry Unit of the Vorkal Crusades. 100 confirmed planetary pacifications. 0 victories since its last rider was pulped inside its neural cradle. The crowd laughed again. A pair of armored aliens mimed being thrown through the air. Another checked the sales slate and snorted. Maintenance costs exceeded conquest yield, someone said. It learned too slowly. Then too much. The war horse lifted its head at the noise. Its remaining eye glowed, just for a moment, with something like awareness. The chains tightened automatically, energy fields humming as the restraint system interpreted movement as aggression. The laughter sharpened. No bid so far, the broker continued, delighted. We remind potential buyers that the exchange is not liable for cranial liquefaction, spinal inversion, or existential terror. That was when the human stopped walking. He had entered the yard unnoticed, which was normal. Humans rarely drew attention among species twice their height or 10 times their mass. He wore a worn jacket reinforced at the elbows, boots scuffed by too many decks, too many worlds. A cargo tag still clung to his shoulder like an afterthought. He had been moving past Dock 9, eyes scanning out of habit rather than curiosity, until he saw the warhorse's stance. He stepped closer. A nearby merchant glanced down at him, amusement blooming. Careful little primate. That thing eats confidence. The human didn't answer. He was studying the creature the way some people studied puzzles. Not at the obvious missing pieces, but at how the remaining ones still fit together. The war horse sensed him before its sensors registered the movement. Its head turned slowly. The chain strained again, but this time the fields didn't spike. For the first time since arriving in the yard, the human smiled, but only a little. The broker noticed. Interested, are you? It asked, voice slick with mockery. Perhaps as wall decor? I want to know something first, the human said. His voice was calm, unaccented galactic trade standard. No fear in it. No bravado either. The broker gestured grandly. Ask by all means. This is a learning experience for everyone. The human rested a hand on the rail, fingers close enough that the warhorse could see them. Scarred knuckles. Steady. Does it still choose its rider? He asked. The laughter didn't just stop. It fractured. A few aliens glanced at one another, uncertain whether they translated correctly. The broker blinked, then laughed again, louder than before. Choose? That practice was abandoned centuries ago. Riders are installed, not selected. The war horse lowered its head, chains whining softly as its weight shifted. Its sensor eye fixed on the human's hand. I didn't ask what you abandoned, the human said. I asked what it does. Silence crept back in, slow and uncomfortable. An archivist drone hovering near the platform pulsed as it accessed sealed records. Old ones. Dangerous ones. Its light flickered, then dimmed as if reconsidering whether to speak. The broker waved a dismissive limb. Irrelevant philosophy. The unit is damaged beyond combat viability. If you're foolish enough to want it, I'll start the bid at salvage weight. Numbers flashed above the rail. The price barely covered the metal in its chains. The human didn't hesitate. I'll pay now. A ripple went through the crowd. Some leaned forward, eager for disaster. Others stepped back, instinctively distancing themselves from whatever stupidity they believed was about to unfold. Final sale, the broker declared, delighted. No warranties, No refunds. The chains disengaged with a heavy clang. For one long breath, nothing happened. Then the warhorse leaned forward, not in attack but effort. Its damaged leg trembled, then held. Plates shifted, recalibrating around stress points that had gone unsupported for years. Old systems whispered to life, drawn by proximity rather than command. The human stepped onto the platform. Restraint protocol screamed. Killsafes armed. The warhorse lowered its massive head until it was level with the human's chest. Heat radiated from it, ancient and restrained. Power hummed beneath armor that had once shattered cities. The human reached out and placed his palm against cold plating etched with forgotten victories. "It's all right," he said softly, like he was speaking to something injured rather than dangerous. The warhorse exhaled. Chains fell slack. Warning glyphs dimmed. Across Dock 9 no one laughed anymore. And far above the gas giant's storms, something old enough to remember honor before conquest recognized a choice it had not been offered in centuries, and did not reject. The official transfer took 7 signatures, 3 biometric scans, and 1 public disclaimer stating that the Galactic Exchange bore no responsibility for the human's continued existence. The broker enjoyed reading it aloud. The human listened without comment, standing beside the warhorse as if he had always belonged there. Up close, the scale difference was absurd. The creature's plated shoulder alone outweighed the man several times over, and the exposed seams in its armor radiated a low, unstable heat. Yet the warhorse remained still, its head lowered slightly, motion sensors tracking the human's breathing rather than the crowd. "What is your designation?" the broker asked, already bored. "Elias Rook," the human replied. A murmur rippled outward. Humans rarely named themselves so plainly among the stars. It marked him as either confident or reckless. "And your purchase?" the broker prompted. Elias looked up at the creature beside him. "He's not a purchase." The broker snorted. "Everything here is." Elias didn't argue. He lifted his hand again, not to touch this time, but to give the warhorse space to close the distance on its own. The machine beast hesitated, internal systems warring between obsolete obedience subroutines and something older, deeper. Finally, it leaned forward until its plated brow hovered inches from Elias's forehead. The exchange scanners spiked. Neural activity bloomed where dead zones had dominated moments before. Correlation metrics, and used for centuries, lit up across ancient diagnostic language. Several archivist drones rotated in place, alarmed. "Step back," someone shouted. Elias didn't move. When the warhorse exhaled again, the sound reverberated like rolling thunder through Dock 9. The energy fields dimmed to a standby state without command input. A bond channel, long forbidden, flickered into partial existence. The broker's amusement faltered. "That's not supposed to happen." "It's supposed to choose," Elias said quietly. "You just stopped listening when you didn't like the answers." Security units began to reposition. Not aggressively but uncertainly, the most dangerous posture an authority could take. The exchange had rules and one of them had just been bent far enough to creak. Elias turned away from the crowd. "We're leaving." A guard stepped into his path, chitin armor clicking. "You are authorized to remove salvage only via freight tow. Live assets of this classification require escort and control oversight." The warhorse lifted its head. Every weapon on the platform locked onto it automatically. Power readings jumped again, this time higher than any public record for its class. Elias raised his hand, palm open, not at the guards but at the creature beside him. "Easy." "Not yet." The warhorse stilled. The weapons did not lower. The guard hesitated. "You can't control it." Elias met the guard's compound gaze. "I'm not trying to." That answer unsettled them more than defiance would have. The broker cleared its throat, suddenly eager to return to procedure. "Ownership has transferred. The human assumes all risk. Remove the asset and free the dock." The guard stepped aside, expression unreadable. Elias walked. The warhorse followed. Not because it was commanded. Because it chose to place its massive stride in rhythm with his smaller one as they moved across the platform together. Each step grew more stable than the last, adaptive plating flowing subtly, correcting imbalances that had plagued it for decades. Systems once thought irreparably decayed synchronized around a new constant. Human presence. They reached the freight gates at the edge of the exchange. Elias stopped there, resting a hand against a bulkhead, and finally looked tired. Years of travel had taught him how to hide it well, but the proximity to something this powerful pulled honesty from him in unfamiliar ways. "I won't ride you," he said quietly, aware of the listening sensors, the watching crowd. Not until you ask. The warhorse lowered itself with care, immense frame folding until its head rested just above the deck. Its remaining eye dimmed, then brightened again in a slow, deliberate pulse. The partial bond channel stabilized another fraction. Somewhere in its forgotten memory layers, a term surfaced, one that predated conquest algorithms and obedience laws. Not master. Not rider. Chosen. Elias closed his eyes briefly, the ghost of another life passing through him. Mud under boots, the weight of a rainsman's trust, the sound of artillery rolling too close for comfort. He had lost people. Lost mounts. Lost the belief that anything built for war could also be spared from it. Yet here this creature was, broken by the galaxy and still capable of choice. We'll figure it out, he said. One step at a time. Behind them, Dock 9 buzzed with hurried transmission traffic. Private channels lit up. Military observers flagged anomalies. In sealed databanks, ancient warnings were unarchived, their relevance reassessed after centuries of dismissal. Because the warhorse was waking up. And it was not waking up alone. The berth Elias rented was barely large enough for a freight crawler, let alone something once designed to reshape battlefields. It hung at the quiet edge of the exchange's shadow, where decommissioned hull sections blocked most external sensors and the artificial gravity wavered just enough to discourage casual inspection. It was not privacy so much as neglect, and neglect was often the best shield. The warhorse rested there in a crouch that strained the deck plates. Up close, its injuries were worse than the yard had suggested. Entire armor segments had been fused shut to stop internal collapse. Power veins thick as cables pulsed erratically beneath scorched plating. Some systems had been forcibly locked rather than repaired, as if previous owners had decided it was safer for the creature to remain half-broken than fully alive. Elias unpacked his tools slowly, making sure his movements stayed predictable. He spoke while he worked, not because he expected replies, but because silence felt like abandonment. Most things stop working because people rush them, he said, running a diagnostic probe along a damaged joint. You rush a fix, not a problem. The warhorse's head angled slightly toward him. Acknowledgement, not obedience. Elias traced the damage without activating repair drones. He wanted to feel how the metal responded, where it resisted and where it wanted to flex. Human engineering favored tolerance over perfection. Leave space for failure, and failure had less reason to become catastrophic. Hours passed. Or perhaps cycles. Time behaved strangely under the station's uneven gravity, and Elias did not track it closely. He stripped away restraints that no longer served function, replaced power couplings with simpler conduits, rerouted feedback loops through analog dampeners scavenged from obsolete human craft. The warhorse endured it all without aggression. Gradually, its breathing, more a venting of superheated air than respiration, settled into a measurable rhythm that mirrored Elias's own. Systems that had once fought one another for dominance began to synchronize around a new axis of control that did not rely on hard commands. Trust. That realization made Elias pause. He leaned back, wiping grease from his hands, and finally allowed himself to feel the weight of what he was attempting. Entire civilizations had failed to tame this creature through domination. They had layered control atop control until the strain tore both rider and mount apart. Humans, he thought, had learned a different lesson from horses long ago. Force built speed. Relationship built endurance. He stepped back into the warhorse's field of view and met its gaze. You don't owe me anything, he said. If you want to walk away when the door opens, I won't stop you. The sensors in the creature's skull whirred softly. Memory clusters accessed sealed archives, fragments of buried experience surfacing without guidance. Fields of ash. Riders screaming as neural links overloaded. A long fall into chains and silence. Elias remained where he was, offering no commands, no expectations. Slowly the warhorse shifted its damaged foreleg. The joint resisted, then yielded as reactive material softened under redirected power. It straightened further than it had in decades. A stabilized harmonic rippled through the berth. External monitors pinged warnings as energy output rose, cleanly this time without the jagged fluctuations that indicated instability. Elias smiled despite himself. That's better, he murmured. Elsewhere in the station, attention consolidated. Exchange analysts flagged the anomaly. Military observers withdrew their curiosity from louder, flashier threats to focus on the human and his improbable recovery project. No one interrupted. Intervention required justification and curiosity did not qualify. Elias worked on. He slept near the warhorse, curled against its side where residual heat chased away the cold. He shared ration packs, nutrient slurries adjusted gradually to match the creature's original metabolic schema. When exhaustion claimed him, he dreamed of open plains beneath an unfiltered sky, of riding something powerful without needing to conquer it first. When he woke, the war horse had repositioned slightly, angling one armored flank to shield him from the birth's draft. That was when Elias named him. Solace, he said, testing the sound. Because everyone deserves something that reminds them why they keep going. The name registered. Not as a command. As a reference point. Solace lowered his head until the massive curve of his brow rested against Elias's chest. A soft vibration ran through his frame as dormant subsystems aligned around a newly defined priority: preservation over annihilation. The partial bond channel flared. Unlike earlier riders, Elias felt no invasive spike in sensation, no attempt by the creature to overwrite his nervous system. Instead, the connection formed at the periphery, a shared awareness rather than a merged identity. It was enough. Easy, Elias whispered, steadying himself. That's far enough for now. Solace pulled back immediately. The channel stabilized at a lower amplitude, clean and sustainable. Ancient sigils etched into his armor ignited faintly, responding not to authority codes but to the consistency of Elias's presence. For the first time since the Vorkel Crusades ended in extinction, the war horse stood fully upright. The birth shuddered as his full mass settled into equilibrium, plating flowing smoothly into configurations unseen in any surviving technical schematic. He was not being restored to his old form. He was becoming something else. Alarms sounded briefly across the exchange, then cut off as systems recalibrated their threat parameters. No hostile actions registered. No breach of protocol occurred. And yet, in sealed council chambers light years away, long-buried advisories resurfaced at the same moment across multiple datanets. Warnings written by civilizations that no longer existed. About bond weapons that could not be controlled once healed, only followed. Elias stood in front of Solace, small and unarmed, and rested his palm against newly living armor. "We'll take it slow," he said, more to himself than to the galaxy listening in fragments. "But we won't hide forever." Solace's remaining eye brightened, steady and calm. Somewhere beyond the birth's hull, the universe adjusted its expectations. The first explosion registered as a pressure anomaly rather than a sound. Elias felt it through Solace before the birth's alarms finished waking, a distant concussion traveling along the station's structural spine. Solace's head lifted instantly, posture shifting from rest to readiness with unsettling smoothness. Systems Elias had never touched came online, not in panic but in sequence, as if responding to a threat they had been waiting patiently to face. Red light washed over the birth. "Unauthorized breach," the station AI announced, voice steady and fatally inadequate. "Multiple hostile vessels have initiated boarding actions. Civilian sectors advised to seal and..." The signal cut out. Elias was already on his feet. He pulled his jacket on by reflex, fingers tight despite his calm. "How bad?" he asked, knowing Solace could not answer in words yet trusting the awareness humming at the edge of his thoughts. The answer came as intent. Solace turned toward the sealed hatch. Power flowed into his frame in disciplined waves, armor knitting into configurations Elias recognized only from old archival schematics. Not the towering siege form the galaxy remembered, but a compact, mobile posture optimized for confined environments. He was adapting again. "They're not here for scrap," Elias said under his breath. "They're here for you." A violent impact slammed into the far side of the berth. The hatch buckled, metal screaming as cutting fields bit deep. Through the deck, Elias felt Solace's restrained fury, focused, contained, waiting for permission that no longer came from above but beside. Elias placed a hand against Solace's armor. "We don't start this," he said. "But we finish it if they force us." That was enough. The hatch failed inward, collapsing under the concentrated assault of a mercenary breach team in matte black exosuits marked with no sovereign insignia. They moved fast and confident, weapons already charged, assuming fear and chaos would soften their target. Solace moved first. He did not roar. He stepped. The deck plates cratered as his mass shifted forward, and the lead mercenary vanished in a blur of precision too clean to be called violence. A limb struck, not to kill, but to remove the threat's ability to continue, tearing weapon and arm free in a single optimized motion. The others fired. Energy slammed into Solace's armor and dispersed along reactive channels Elias had helped rebuild, power diffusing into harmless heat that made the air shimmer. The bond thrummed, feeding Elias awareness without overwhelming him. Angles, trajectories, intent. Left, Elias said. Solace adjusted before the word finished leaving Elias's mouth. A plasma bolt meant for Elias burned a hole in the bulkhead instead. Fear finally reached the mercenaries. "This is control," one shouted over squad comms. "Repeat, that thing is under control." Solace struck the deck hard enough to knock the remaining attackers from their feet. He did not pursue the ones who fled. He stood between Elias and the corridor, immovable, a wall made from purpose rather than steel. External feeds flickered to life across unsecured channels. The exchange authorities had failed to contain the breach, so the galaxy watched instead. Combat telemetry streamed live as Solace moved through the station, guided not by kill protocols but by Elias's calm direction. They advanced methodically, clearing corridors, disabling boarding parties with minimal force. Where panic might have caused slaughter, discipline created space. "You don't have to do this," a station official pleaded through an open channel. "Stand down and surrender the asset. We can contain this." Elias stopped walking. Solace halted with him, towering and silent. "This isn't containment," Elias said. "It's fear catching up with you." Behind them, mercenary shuttle bays burned. In front of them, security lines wavered, unsure whether to engage or retreat. The ancient power the galaxy had laughed at now stood tempered by human restraint, and no one knew how to counter that. A broadcast cut through all others, clear, authoritative, terrified. "This is the Corthan Coalition," the voice announced. "Human Elias Rook, you are in possession of restricted war material classified beyond civilian ownership. Power down the construct immediately." Elias looked up at Solace's armored flank. "They want me to shut you off." Solace did not react with anger. He waited. Elias turned back to the camera feed. "You already tried that. Your predecessors too. It didn't work then and it won't now." The silence that followed carried the weight of recalculation. Solace stepped forward into full view of the cameras. Glyphs along his armor ignited, not as weapons markers but as recognition symbols. Ancient declarations of bonded command, long erased from public records but still understood by military historians watching in disbelief. A war construct was declaring alignment. Not with a state. With a human. "This is not a threat," Elias said. "It's a boundary. You crossed it first." No one fired. Because for the first time in centuries, the galaxy understood the truth it had ignored. The war horse had never been dangerous because of what it was, but because of what it could become when someone finally stood beside it instead of on top of it. Solace powered down just enough to show restraint. And across 1,000 observing worlds, laughter turned into something colder and far more honest. The aftermath stretched like a quiet shadow over the galactic exchange yards. Smoke from breached corridors had cleared, leaving only scorched plates and the faint tang of overcharged energy. Broadcasts still relayed fragments of the battle, looping across comm networks and private feeds, the images of Solace and Elias moving with precise, almost serene power imprinted in the minds of countless spectators. Analysts argued, historians recalculated, and mercenaries whispered warnings, but Elias paid them little mind. He stood at the edge of the berth, hand brushing against Solace's flank, listening to the slow, measured pulse of the bond they had forged. "Do you ever wonder why they laughed?" he asked softly. His voice carried no malice, only curiosity. Solace lowered his head slightly, sensors flickering as if considering the question. The answer was not spoken, but it was understood. Laughter came from ignorance. From the inability to grasp what humans valued most. Patience, persistence, and the courage to repair what others discarded. The exchange's remaining authorities approached cautiously, their voices formal, trying to reclaim a sense of control. "You've violated multiple statutes. The construct is classified beyond civilian ownership. Compliance is mandatory." Elias turned to them, eyes calm but unyielding. "It's not yours to reclaim. It never was. You thought you owned it because you built it, because you chained it, because you taught it to fear. You never considered that someone might teach it to trust." Solace shifted beside him, a subtle yet undeniable display of alignment. Every sensor in the berth recognized the partnership. No force in the yard could override it, and the message sent ripples across galactic councils and militaries alike. Humans did not dominate by threat, they commanded through understanding. The first council representative stepped forward, voice trembling. We must negotiate. The galaxy cannot permit this." Elias raised a hand. "Negotiation starts when you recognize the truth. Fear of what you do not understand is not a policy." He glanced at Solace. "You've seen enough." Solace responded by lowering his massive head, exhaling in a vibration that reverberated through the hull. a sound ancient enough to unsettle observers. He did not attack. He did not yield. He simply existed, anchored beside Elias, a living testament to the bond between human and machine. For the first time, the galaxy saw it clearly. Humans were not weaker because they were smaller. They were formidable because they chose relationships over control. They were terrifying not for weapons, but for the loyalty they inspired, for the patience they wielded like armor. Outside the berth, the exchange began to reorganize around a new reality. Mercenary groups retreated from previously contested zones, wary of the consequences of engaging what they had been told was a broken relic. Observers recorded protocols for future reference, many of them muttering that human methodology had rewritten centuries of strategic assumptions in a single day. Elias took a deep breath, letting the weight of the moment settle. Years of loss, exile, and survival had brought him here, and he knew the galaxy would remember this day for generations. Yet there was no arrogance in him, no satisfaction from triumph. His focus remained singular, the creature at his side, once a weapon of war, now a partner. "We leave," he said softly, turning to Solace. "No more waiting for others to decide our fate. No more cages, no more spectators." The war horse responded immediately. With a careful, practiced motion, Solace folded himself to move through the station's constrained corridors, armor flowing seamlessly with every step. Doors sealed, gravity fields adjusted, and sensors calibrated to follow them rather than to control them. For every system the exchange had tried to dominate, there was now a human-guided counterbalance, precise and deliberate. As they moved toward the freight lanes, a message pinged across Elias's personal comm. It was a formal transmission from the Galactic Council. "Elias Rook, immediate review and containment measures authorized. The war construct is considered active and dangerous beyond precedent. Approach with caution." Elias smiled faintly. "They're finally paying attention." He guided Solace onto a transport skiff. The creature's massive form adjusted to the craft's containment field without compromise, a delicate balance of power and trust. Elias watched as the yards receded below, the once laughing crowd now silent, their amusement replaced by awe and unease. The engines hummed to life, propelling them away from the exchange and into the void between gas giant storms. Elias leaned back, letting the rhythm of Solace's system synchronize with the skiff's thrusters. The bond was alive, dynamic, and unbroken. "Where to first?" he asked, not expecting an answer. Solace's eye glowed, scanning the stars ahead, the decision made silently. The path was theirs alone. No chains, no bids, no derision, only the open expanse of the galaxy. And as the stars stretched into streaks of light across the viewport, the truth crystallized. The galaxy had not witnessed the rise of a weapon. It had witnessed the rise of humanity. In that quiet, fleeting moment, Elias knew this was only the beginning. There would be councils, disputes, and threats yet unseen. The galaxy would test them, push them, doubt them. And each time, Solace would stand beside him, not as a tool, not as a captive, but as a partner forged in patience, respect, and trust. A new definition of power had emerged. One that could not be bought, sold, or chained. And the galaxy would never forget it. Elias reached out, brushing his fingers across Solace's cooled plating, feeling the steady heartbeat within. "Let them watch," he said quietly. "Let them remember what happens when humans choose to fight differently." Solace exhaled, a slow, controlled pulse that resonated across the skiff. They were leaving the yards behind, but their story would stretch far beyond the void between worlds. In the distance, the stars shimmered like distant eyes, waiting to witness the legend unfold. For the first time in centuries, a creature born of war slept beside a human not out of obedience, but because it had chosen to. And in that choice lay the final, unassailable truth. Humans did not need to conquer to prevail. They simply needed to care enough to be understood. And with Solace at his side, Elias Rook would show the galaxy exactly what that meant.